So this past Sunday, I was talking with you a little bit about how we make decisions in life with all the competing voices, either externally or internally. Sometimes making big decisions can be really difficult and extremely challenging. And so, what I want to do is just talk with you for a few minutes about how you actually go about making some of those big decisions in life. I mean, how do you choose a college or a trade? How do you choose a partner? How do you know if he or she is the right person? How do you know whether you stay in a job or you go and find a new one? Like, there are just so many big decisions that inevitably come up over the course of our lives that it's just important to get a feel for, like, am I doing the right thing? Or am I just kind of crossing my fingers and winging it and hoping that the best possible outcome will happen? You know, I don't know whether you have a process or not for making your decisions, but sometime back, I learned from a spiritual director who lived in the 1500s some principles that I've been using in my own life and that I've found helpful when it comes to making decisions that are pretty important for me. And so, what I want to do today is just share some of those with you in the hopes that it might be helpful for you. So, there are several steps when making a decision that I think are important to consider. And I just want to walk you through what these are for me. So, step number one is that you begin by just creating a quiet space and seeking God and praying for indifference to anything other than His will. You know, sometimes when we go into trying to make a decision, we already are sort of leaning in one direction or another. And when we pray, we're just kind of hoping that God will bless off on what it is that we really want. But I think this part, this first step, which is really the most difficult step, is very important. It's the prayer that Jesus prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane just before his life would be taken. You know, he was suffering and struggling, and he knew what was ahead of him, but he really didn't want to live into that. And yet he got to this place where ultimately he just said to his father, listen, let my will let your will be done and not my own. And I think that's really, if we can begin with being honest with God about the things that we want, but asking him to help us come to a place of holy indifference to anything other than his will, I think that's the most important piece, and yet it is the most difficult. And so sometimes when I'm in this space, what I like to do is ask myself a question or two. Like, so for example, one of the things when I'm struggling or wrestling with trying to get to that place of indifference, I'll just ask, is there anything that I need to set aside? Is there anything that I need to surrender or to let go of so that I can get to a place where I can be open to what it is that God does want for me? Because at the end of the day, like, really, that's what you want. You want to be in union. You want to be in alignment with what God's will is for you in any and every situation. And so that first part is to pray for anything other than the will of God to be released so that you can come to a place of acceptance with what it is that he has for you. Once you get to that space of indifference, the next step is to actually pray for wisdom. In the book of James, in the first chapter, it says, if any of you is lacking wisdom, ask God, who gives generously and ungrudgingly, and it will be given to you. So that's a promise that you want to claim. If you're indifferent to anything other than the will of God and you're seeking wisdom, the scriptures say God will give it to you. And so, as you pray that prayer, the next step is to begin to ask some questions. And you ask these questions so that you can gain some data and really gain perspective so that when you're making your decision, you have all of the information that you need that will help guide you into the best possible choice. So there are a lot of questions that you can ask during this period, but I'm going to give you just a handful. And if you want to take a moment and just write some of these down, I'll go along slowly enough so that you can do that. So one of the first questions that I ask deals with direction and calling. It's really a question that's in essence, how does this choice that I'm trying to make fit with the overall direction and calling of God on my life? Is this choice going to enable me to live into that calling, or is it going to take me out of it? The first question has to do with direction and calling. The second question has to do with desire. So in any given situation, sometimes I have competing desires. Sometimes there are things going on that I'm just trying to sort out. But as I create a quiet space and I listen to my heart, what I want to try and do is get in touch with what the deepest desire of my heart is relative to the choice that I'm facing. The second question has to do with desire. Question number 3 has to do with the life of Christ. As a Christian, I want to be sure that the choices that I'm making and the direction that I'm going is actually consistent with what I know about the heart and the mind of Christ and his loving, redemptive purposes in the world. Question number 3 is more so, am I in union and alignment with the life and purposes of Christ for me? Question number 4 has to do with character and development. Will the choice that I'm about to make continue to nurture growth in me, or is it in some way possibly going to stunt growth? Is this choice a choice that I'm taking because I want a shortcut, because I want to get at something quicker, faster, easier? Or is this choice that I'm making actually going to nurture growth and development and life and maturity? I think that's an important one. Question number 5 has to do with love. It's really simple. It's what does love call for in this situation? And that might seem easy to you, but when you sit with that for a moment, I think it's worth considering. What does love call for in this situation? Love for God, love for myself, and maybe for some of the others who are involved in this. Sometimes when we're making decisions, it's not just about us, but it's also including those who are closest to us and who love us the most. So what does love call for in this situation? 6 is an issue of community. It's like, am I willing to open up every facet of the decision that I'm about to make to a trusted friend, to someone who's close to me, who can hear me, who can listen, and then provide wisdom and insight? Because sometimes if I find myself in a place where I don't want to hear anybody else's voice, that's a good indicator that I'm already leaning in a direction and I just want God to bless off on what it is that I want. We have to be in a space where we're willing to listen to somebody that's close to us and that can see things and hear things that we don't always see and hear. And then finally is the question of consolation or desolation. Which choice that I'm about to make is going to bring a deep and inner sense of life and peace and freedom? As I continue moving in a particular direction, is there going to be a growing sense of wholeness and authenticity and congruence with who I am in God? Or is it going to take me out of that? Am I feeling fragmented? Am I feeling just a sense of dis-ease? Am I feeling like just not right in my soul about it? And I might not even know why, but like, how am I feeling? Is there consolation or desolation in this decision? Now, there are probably a lot of other questions that you can ask along the way to gain the data that you need to get the perspective. But at some point, you ultimately just have to make a decision, because at the end of the day, if you wait and wait and wait, your indecision is a decision. At some point, you have to choose, is this the school for me, or is that one the school? Do I go to school, or do I choose a trade? Do I stay with this person, or do I break up? Do I see a future with them? Or is my future with them just difficult to see because I've lacked the courage to do what I knew I needed to do some time ago, and that was to break up? So when I'm faced with decisions where it's kind of an either or, either I go this way or that way, I make this choice or that choice, what I do is I live as if I've made one of those decisions. And I just pay attention during those 2 or 3 days to how I'm feeling, to what's going on in my interior. Like, how am I feeling? Do I feel good about this? Is there a peace about this? Or can I just not, am I restless? Can I just not find a sense of integration with myself and with God? I just pay attention to how I'm feeling and the strong emotions that are going on in my life. At the end of those 2 or 3 days, what I do then is I make the decision as if I've chosen the exact opposite choice. And I live with that for 2 or 3 days. And as I live with that decision, I'm paying attention again to the strong emotions and feelings, to the things that are going on inside of me. And usually by the end of a week or so, a way forward becomes clear for me. Like, as I've listened to and looked at my life, and I've considered from a place of indifference to anything other than the will of God, God will often and usually speak to me about the decision that just seems best and right for me to move forward with. And so that's a process that's been helpful for me. I hope it will be for you. One of the last things I want to say is oftentimes fear can come in, especially if it's a significant decision, especially if the decision is really one where the stakes are super high. But having a process that you work through where you are seeking the will of God and you are moving through it in a way that like will provide guidance and direction, um, enables you to get to a place where um, the fear that you would otherwise let come into play and even have power over helping you to make this decision, sometimes with the wrong motivations, you sort of eliminate that because you're paying attention to the inner consolation that you feel as you've opened up your life and your heart to God and the choices that you're making in this most important place in your life. And so what I have found is that when fear knocks at the door as I walk through this process, I just don't give it a place for it to have any level of control. And so at the end of the day, this is a process with principles that have been helpful for me. I hope that you'll consider it because as you're thinking about the decisions that are in front of you, either today or in the days to come, I think it's helpful to know how to walk through a process where you feel good about the decisions that you're making so that you'll have no regrets. And literally, when I've used this process, I have no regrets in the decisions that I make. I can be at peace with that. And I think really for all of us, that's just what we want. We may or may not always make the right decisions, but I think going through a process where we're at peace with the choices that we make is about the best that we can do. So anyway, I hope this helps. I look forward to hearing feedback from you. I hope you'll try it and get back with me and let me know how it works. But until such time, I wish you well in all of the decisions before you, and I'll hope to see you again real soon. So take care and have a great day. See you later.